I wanted to do a test review for the Chapter 4 and 5 test, which you should take on Thursday or Friday of this week. This will cover the material in Chapter 4 such as the mod operator, variables, declaring, initializing, manipulating them, and so on. It will also cover if statements. So let's start with if statements. Remember that if you have an if statement that just has one line of code in the body, the one line that will execute if the condition is true, you do not need braces. However, if you have more than one line in the body, more than one line of code that should execute if the condition for the if statement is true, then you must provide braces or you will have a logic error in that the code that you mean to be part of the body that is not in braces will always execute. So remember that just indenting or lining up code underneath an if statement does not determine how the statements execute. And this in fact will be used to mislead you on the AP exam in situations where there should be braces around the body of the if statement. So indentation, white space, tabbing, that is not what determines whether or not a line conditionally executes a line of code. It's whether or not the braces are there if there's more than one line of code in the if body. Remember also that if you use a single equals instead of two equals to compare two numbers for equality in the if condition, for example, x single equal 45, that's an assignment statement that will not check for equality. And in NetBeans, that will actually give you a compile error. As you can see here, where I've done something very similar, I've got a single equals here, and I'm getting an error in, again, this is NetBeans. Some will actually run the code, but NetBeans in particular and some of the other compilers will not. They'll give you an error, and of course putting the second equal sign there clears that up. The error that you get is that a Boolean can't be converted to an int because it tries to take that condition in the parentheses and turn it into a true or false type situation, and it thinks that you're trying to assign x the value of the integer or whatever the condition is, and so it tells you it can't convert a Boolean to an int. Now remember, with strings, I just want to point out numeric equality check is two equal signs. But for a string, you would say if x dot equals hello, for example, or you could do equals ignore case to make sure it is not case sensitive, and so on. Remember, do not use two equal signs for checking a string. Do not do x equal hello. You will get inconsistent results. Sometimes they might be right, sometimes they will be wrong. So you need to use the equals or the equals ignore case method of the string class when you are trying to check strings for equality. And if there are not an exact match, if you just use equals and then you were to put hello here with a capital H, this has a lowercase h, to Java, those are not the same. It will come back that they are not equal. Even though to us as people, we can say, yes, that's the same word, to Java, it has to match exactly character for character, letter for letter, space for space, symbol for symbol, uppercase letter to uppercase letter, and so on. Also, for example, if I had an extra space here, or two, those do not match because this string has two spaces in it, this one doesn't. And you can actually use the trim function to get rid of the spaces in X and then check for equality. Make sure that you can read an if statement and figure out the output, predict what it will do. Make sure that you can take two if statements. If you are given one if statement and you're given several options and you are told pick the one that does the same thing that's equivalent, you should be able to realize there are multiple ways to write an if statement. You should be able to interpret and understand the relational operators in an if statement: less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than equal to. Again, two equals means equality. Exclamation point equals means not equals, and an exclamation by itself means not. Because you can have something like if not true, you can actually do that. If not x equals 45, or if not, if it's a string, x dot equals hello. So you can have all kinds of variations on that. Also, try to run this through your compiler. Say that we have a situation where we have division by 0. Let's see what the compiler does with that really quickly. So we'll paste that in. See if it will compile and run. I've got n equal to 0. I'm trying to divide sum by 0. And of course NetBeans is taking a little while. You should also understand that you can have one if nested inside another, and you should be able to interpret that as well and read through that code. And again, I'm still waiting for NetBeans to come back here. So here, sorry, I had some extra braces here and that was throwing the code off a little earlier. So I've gotten rid of the division by 0 issue, so we're not going to be worrying about that also. But notice I can have, here's my if, and technically this is like a, to that driving if 1 equals 0. This if statement is its single line body. So don't get confused and think that you have to have a brace here because there are two lines of code here. I've got this if depending upon this one. This is really one construct. It's more than one line of code, but it's one unit. So I have one unit, which is another single body if underneath this one, so I don't have to use the braces here, and I don't have to use them here because that's a single line if. So I just want to make sure you understand that this is legit. This if sees this unit here as the one line of code. Now if I decided to put other lines of code in that I wanted conditional, and I want that line to only execute if 1 equals 0, then I need braces. Now I've got a multi-body line here. And somehow I keep getting off on the braces with this thing auto-completing for me, which is pretty annoying. Plus I keep over-typing stuff. So if I want system.println condition to only print if 1 equals 0 and if 2 equals 0, then I need the braces here. But if I don't have this line, I don't actually have to have these braces. So let's run it here. And we'll get our 0 and our condition, because I've included that in the braces. If I take these braces off, even though I've indented this, I'm going to get the same output, right? But now if I change this to a 1, and the value in that variable is actually a 0, now I'm going to get, it comes down here, this is true, this unit is not true, even though I've indented, really this is not a conditional line, so I want you to see the difference there with the braces versus no braces on a nested if. The other thing I want you to see we can set up a variable and we can do shortcuts. And this is going to be the same as saying x equals x plus 1. So I should get a 6 here at the end. Okay, so whatever I have in x, if I put plus plus after that variable name after x1 here, that is the same as if I said x1 equals x1 plus 1. I can also do that with minus minus, and that is the same as saying x1 equals x1 minus 1. So those are equivalent. Also, I want to point out up here, this if statement is the same as if I said if 1 equals 0 and 2 equal 1, for example. So this nested if is the equivalent of using a logical and right there. And lastly, I want you to see that we have, not only do we have plus plus and minus minus, we have several other shortcut operators. So if I have a 5 in y1, I could put y1 times equals 5, and that is saying take 5 and multiply it by 5. So that is the same as saying y1 equals y1 times 5, and that will print out 25, for example. You can also do plus equal, that would take the value in y1, which is 5, and it would add 5 to it. You can subtract, and I believe you can do division as well. So those are just some shortcut operators to be aware of. The test is multiple choice format. You will not be writing any code, and at this point I'm still compiling the test, pulling questions out of the combined 3-4 test to make a 4 and 5 test, so I'm not sure. I'm shooting for around 20 questions. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what to expect on the test.